dive. And today we're going to be looking at the world of cryptocurrency ETFs. Specifically, this whole race to get approval from the SEC. We've got some articles here, some research to unpack. And yeah, things are getting pretty interesting,
Yeah, they are.
especially with this potential wave of spot crypto ETFs that could be hitting the market.
Right. And that spot is really the key word there. It means you're directly investing in the cryptocurrency itself, not just kind of betting on its future price. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
think of it like buying a house, right? With a spot crypto ETF, you're basically buying a share of that house.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's got everybody so fired up about these spot crypto ETFs? What's the big deal?
Well, JP Morgan. Major financial institution, they're predicting that these new ETFs could pull in billions of dollars in their first year alone. And that kind of influx of money, that could have a huge impact on the crypto market.
Okay, wow. Billions with a B. That's serious cash. But
Yeah.
before we kind of get ahead of ourselves, there's a bit of a hurdle here, right? The SEC hasn't exactly been super welcoming to these spot crypto ETFs.
Yeah, not exactly. They've been pretty hesitant, especially for assets that don't have a regulated futures market.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. Futures market. For our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with all the financial lingo, can you kind of explain that? What is it and why does the SEC seem to care about it so much?
Sure. So imagine you're not actually buying a house, but instead you're betting on whether its price will go up or down in the future. That's essentially what a futures market is. And the SEC, they see these regulated futures markets as a way to kind of protect investors from, potential price manipulation.
Gotcha. So it's like an extra layer of security
Yeah.
to make sure that things are on the up and up. That makes sense. But it also seems like this requirement is creating kind of a bottleneck for some of these cryptocurrencies that are trying to get their spot ETFs approved.
Yeah. And there's a lot of debate, right, about whether this is actually necessary. Is it a safeguard? Or is it a barrier to innovation?
Right.
Some people argue that too much regulation could actually stifle the growth of the crypto industry.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough balance to strike. So with all that in mind, let's look at some specific examples here. We've got Litecoin, Solana, and XRP mentioned in our sources as the kind of key players in this ETF race. Where should we start?
Well, Litecoin has recently made some news. Canary Capital filed an amended S1 form for a Litecoin ETF.
Right, and that's one of the documents that companies have to file with the SEC when they want to offer a new investment product to the public. So does that mean a Litecoin ETF is a done deal?
Well, not quite. It's definitely a positive step, but it's not a guarantee of approval. They still need to file a 19B4 form, and that's the one that really kind of kicks off that official SEC review process.
Okay, so still some hoops to jump through. But in the meantime, Litecoin's price has been kind of surging. It jumped over 16% in a single day, hit almost $118. Is that just a coincidence, or is there something else going on there?
It's definitely interesting timing. Our sources mention that there's been some increased activity from what they call whales. Basically, these are large investors that hold a significant amount of Litecoin. And when these whales make moves, it can really influence the market.
So these big players might be driving the price up. Is it possible they know something that we don't?
It's possible, but we can't really say for sure. Sometimes it's just good old-fashioned fear of missing out.
The FOMO. We hear so much about that in the crypto world. But while Litecoin is grabbing headlines, it seems like Solana and XRP might actually be further along in this race. Our sources indicate that multiple firms have already filed those crucial 19B4 forms for both Solana and XRP ETFs.
Yeah, and that's a key difference. Filing that 19B4 form means that the SEC has officially started its review process, which is a big step.
And get this, the SEC could actually make a decision.
Yep.
On the Solana ETFs very, very soon. We're talking deadlines in late January.
Right, that's right around the corner. But while the excitement is understandable, let's not forget the SEC's track record with these spot crypto ETFs. They haven't approved a single one yet for an asset without a regulated futures market.
Right. That's that key hurdle that we were talking about earlier. So do you think Solana or XRP have a chance of actually breaking through that barrier?
Well, it really comes down to whether the SEC is ready to kind of, shift its stance on this whole thing.
Yeah, it's a good question. But let's say for argument's sake that one or more of these ETFs actually does get approved. JP Morgan has put out some pretty wild projections about what that could mean.
Oh, yeah, they have. Their analysts are estimating that Solana and XRP ETFs combined could pull in up to $14 billion in their first year, which is a pretty huge number.
Wow. That's not just a splash, that's a tsunami of money coming in. So I'm curious, though, what kind of ripple effect could that have? Would it just boost the prices of those specific cryptocurrencies? Or could we see broader implications for the whole market?
Oh, I think it's highly likely that we'd see effects beyond just Solana and XRP. That kind of investment, that level of institutional investment, it could signal a really major shift in how people view crypto as an asset class. It would be hard to dismiss it as just some kind of fringe movement if you've got these major players pouring billions of dollars into ETFs.
Right, yeah. It's almost like a seal of approval from the traditional financial world.
Exactly. And then that increased legitimacy, right? That could lead to even greater adoption by everyday investors. We might see crypto ETFs becoming as common as, stock ETFs.
Wow, that's a fascinating thought. But let's play devil's advocate for a second here. What about the potential downsides? I mean, we've seen how volatile the crypto market can be. So could this sudden influx of, billions of dollars, could that create a bubble that's just waiting to burst?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. When you have these rapid price increases that are driven by speculation rather than, actual underlying value, that can create some unsustainable bubbles. And I think it's just really crucial to remember that investing in crypto, even through an ETF, it still carries inherent risks.
So while the potential for growth is definitely exciting, it's important for our listeners to kind of approach this with a healthy dose of caution and do their own research.
Absolutely. And this kind of brings us back to that core issue of regulation. Some people might see the SEC's requirements as being too strict, but others argue that they're absolutely necessary to protect investors from the kind of volatility and potential for manipulation that we see in this, relatively new market.
Yeah. It's a complex debate, no easy answers, but I think it does highlight something important. The future of crypto ETFs, and maybe even the crypto market as a whole, really hinges on finding that balance between fostering innovation and making sure that investors are protected.
Absolutely. And, as we're watching this all play out, I think it's worth looking at the precedents set by Bitcoin and Ethereum. Their ETFs were approved because they already had those established futures markets.
Right, and that seemed to be enough to satisfy the SEC's concerns about market manipulation. So does that mean that other cryptocurrencies are basically playing catch-up here? Do they need to develop these regulated futures markets to even have a shot at getting their spot ETFs approved?
Well, it's definitely a path that a lot of them are pursuing, but it does raise kind of an interesting question. Could this requirement, while, being well-intentioned, could it actually be hindering innovation by favoring the players that are already established?
That's a good point. Yeah, could it be stifling the growth of newer cryptocurrencies? That might have the potential to, really change things up in different industries.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility worth thinking about. And I think it's something for, for your listeners to consider as they're watching this whole landscape evolve. What if? What if the next big breakthrough in crypto is being held back by regulations that were designed for a previous generation of technology?
Now, that's a question that really gets the wheels turning. So we've got Litecoin making moves, Solana and XRP seemingly in the lead, and this kind of underlying tension between regulation and innovation. What's the one big takeaway that you think our listeners should keep in mind as they watch this crypto ETF race unfold?
It really feels like we're at this kind of crossroads, We've got the potential for this huge growth and mainstream adoption, but we've also got these inherent risks and regulatory challenges that come with, the market that's still figuring itself out.
It's a lot to keep track of. But for our listener who's maybe just starting to learn about crypto, what would you say is the most important thing to understand out of all of this?
I think it's that. The crypto ETF landscape, it's dynamic, it's full of potential, but it is still really early days. There are great opportunities, but there are also risks. And just like with any investment, it's crucial to do your research, understand what's going on with the technology and the market forces, and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Really solid advice. And as this whole race for crypto ETF approval keeps heating up, we'll be here to break it all down every step of the way.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, keep learning, and who knows, maybe someday we'll be covering your deep dive into, the world of decentralized finance or the latest blockchain breakthrough.
Hey, now there's a thought. The future of finance. It's being written right now, folks, and we're all along for the ride. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.